Sorry, Cal.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Fitter and Faster Coaches Corner. I'm your host, as always, Mike Murray, and today I am super excited about this episode. Been talking about this for about a month. I'm really glad that I finally had the time and the chance to get these guys on. Please welcome today's guest to talk about the NCAA Division III experience, Denison Swimming and Diving Staff, Head Coach Gregg Parini, and Associate Head Coach Kellen Beckwith. How are you guys?
Good morning. Doing great.
Doing great. Excited to be on this. I won't lie. This is my first podcast, so it should be a fun one.
Well, Kellen, let me correct you because this is a webinar.
Webinar. Sorry. It's my first webinar then, too.
He's so young. He's so young.
We were outside training this morning, guys. It was 37 degrees on the pool deck. What's the weather like out there in Ohio?
It was cool this morning. I rode my motorcycle in this morning. It was a little chilly on the hands. I know Kellen chose not to ride his bike in. A little chilly. We were probably high 30s, maybe low 40s when we broke out this morning. So not as cold as you guys, though.
Well, it should be noted right out of the gate that Denison Swimming and Diving right now has 3 Victor Swim Club alumni in the program. We did have one just graduate, so he's no longer there, including my daughter, Savannah, who's going to be furious that I mentioned her on this broadcast. So let me just say that for my family and our program, we are so proud to be part of the Denison family. So thank you guys very much for agreeing to do this. And I know that Fitter and Faster is so excited to have you guys talk about what we have on the schedule today. The first thing that I want to ask you, and this one's going to be pointed right to you, Greg, because this is something that's kind of defined your program the last 10, 20 years. And that's the phrase Semper Avante. That's kind of the driving force behind the philosophy of your program. Can you speak to what it means to you in the program and why it's so important to your team?
Well, it comes out of a conversation that I had with my father, who was one of my, instrumental role models. He was my first coach. I mean, he coached me in football, coached me in basketball, coached me in baseball. Couldn't swim a lick, but he certainly had a lasting influence on me. And, he was very helpful in me, especially as a younger coach, trying to help formulate what I stood for and help me kind of articulate what was important to me, what my core values were as I was trying to develop this program. And over the course of years, we kept coming back to this phrase Semper Avante, which is something that he used actually in his own business world, which is, it stands for always forward. And that, when in doubt, always go forward. And there's so many things that are wrapped up in the phrase going forward. It's a calling to, it's almost like a battle cry for us in many ways. It helps us stay centered on what's important. And what's important is first and foremost a growth mindset, is that we're always going forward. We're always looking for the horizon. We're always trying to identify what our learning curve is and challenge ourselves in such a way that we continue to grow. But it's also a battle cry through tough moments. It's always, when things get hard, when things get tough, that we have the resources, internal and external, to see those moments through. And it's something that I remember presenting to the team so many years ago, and I can't tell you exactly what the time frame was when I introduced it to them. But as we started talking about it, I wasn't quite sure if I was gaining traction with the team. And then eventually and slowly, I started seeing tattoos with the phrase Semper Avante showing up on both the men's and women's bodies, which told me that it was striking a chord with them, that they were starting to internalize the message. And the one time it really came home to me when that it had taken hold and was actually serving us well is back in 2014, February 2014, we had a very unfortunate accident on campus with one of our former swimmers. And it took place about 5 days before our conference championships. And you don't need to go into the details, but the team was devastated at the loss of this young man's life. And I remember, we went through all the appropriate mourning, and I remember we had a memorial service at the chapel the Tuesday before our conference meet started. Kellen was there, and after the memorial service, the swimmers and divers gathered up on the stage at Swayze Chapel, And we were just sitting around in a circle and just spending time with each other and just kind of comforting each other and propping each other up in a really difficult moment. And I remember one of our divers at the time, Connor Dignan, nobody was saying anything. And then Connor just said Semper Avante, which is like, okay, we've got to get through this and we've got to go forward through this. And I remember, you're never quite sure how this is all going to go, but long story short, Connor was our first competitor at the conference championship the next day in the diving event. I think it was 3-meter diving, one of the diving events. And he went out and demolished the national record by probably a good 100 points. And the national record still stands. It was like 600 and some points. And it just set the tone for the whole meet for both our men's and women's teams. And at that point, I realized that this was much more than just a fancy phrase or a logo but it was something that spoke to our team at a very profound and deep level. And it's something that really sustains us through the tough times. So when in doubt, go forward. It kind of taps into the old Winston Churchill quote, whereas, if you're going through hell, if you find yourself going through hell, just keep going. And that's kind of what we do. But it sustains us in tough moments, but more importantly, it guides us in those days that are a little bit easier too.
Kellen, you were a very accomplished Division III swimmer. You had coached previously at a few schools. What was it like to plug into the legacy and the tradition of success at Denison? Was that a challenging transition for a young coach at first?
It was scary as hell, I won't lie. It kind of shook me up at first. I won't lie. I was kind of surprised that I had the opportunity originally, because I'm still the young guy here and I'm going on my 9th season. But for me, it was okay. I started swimming sophomore year of high school. Let's see where I can go with this thing. And I was always intrigued by not only Denison, but also the elite level of everything that this program brings. And heck, I hadn't swam in 2 years or so, and Greg was talking to the team, and I felt like I could have hopped up and swam a lifetime best that first season. But it's the mentality and everything here at Denison that, heck, I swear that first year I don't know how I lived because I worked so much. And I just wanted to keep up and work hard with this group, because that's what it's all about, is hard work.
Absolutely. So I know, just from knowing you guys and having the privilege of being up there, that philosophy is so important. Greg, you have a quote on the outside of your office that resonated with me when I visited Denison the last time. And I think it's important, really, when we talk about the Division III experience, which we're going to get into, but why philosophy is so important and why the quote that's outside your office is so significant to you and your team.
Well, I've got 3 of them out there, and they're all really important to me. And these are significant quotes, but I think you're referencing the Teddy Roosevelt the Teddy Roosevelt speech that he gave in Europe. And, I think team culture precedes everything. I think culture precedes relationships, which precedes behavior, which precedes performance. And I think team culture for us has always been important. And, I ran into that particular speech by Roosevelt, decades ago. And it just resonated with me, because it talked about leaving it basically all out, basically all in the pool for us. But just being completely invested in the things that we do in heart, mind, and soul. And, and I think that that's something that we've always embodied. One of the most important experiences I had as a young coach is I had a wonderful mentor who challenged me to identify those core values that were non-negotiable. And what were those core values that I wanted to build this program around. And that particular speech by Roosevelt, I think, embodied so many of those core values for me. And the core values are and there are values, and we certainly don't have a monopoly on them. I think they're values that other people share, but that particular speech, I think, embodies so much of the things that we believe in here. And I think when our swimmers and divers arrive at Denison, they immediately begin to sense wow, there's something bigger going on here than just going up and down the pool and getting off the boards in a significant way. And there is, and for us, we view, swimming and diving and the Denison experience as a transformative, growth enhancing experience. And it starts with the culture. And, I'm much more interested in, I'm always interested in the X's and O's and how you train and, the physiology of it. That's my background, lactate and all that good stuff. But you have to have a broader context than that, because I think it's the context which provides our swimmers with the strong why as to why they're getting up in the morning to do all these things. And so I think just culture precedes everything, and it's very, very important to us.
Kellen, getting there your first year, you talked about, being a little intimidated, but once you got comfortable, what did you notice about the culture at Denison that might separate it from other programs and college swimming in general?
I think the team and the greater purpose of team here is, I was part of a great team in high school where I thought it meant something. I was part of a great team in college. I coached at great teams, but I think the level of team, whether it was the guy that was going to win a national title and a national record holder, or the guy fighting for a conference spot, everybody mattered. And I think that's something that separates us. I just remember watching Al Weick go crazy, losing his mind for Seamus Appel, who was throwing the most amazing 500 swim up in Canton. And Al Weick was the national champ and national record holder in the 500 at the time. And Seamus was just fighting for it. And the dude laid it all on the line. And I think that was one of the coolest moments to see that the team, no matter if you're the big dog or someone on the rise, everybody mattered, which you can't find everywhere. I think that's one of the coolest things of the team here.
No doubt about it. And it's palpable when you watch, when as a parent and as a coach and as someone who knows a lot about swimming, watches you compete. That's so apparent. So I want to jump into this bigger discussion now, guys. And one of the most important questions that we've talked about this season on Coach's Corner has been the following. How has your team navigated the pandemic to this point? And what's the transition been like back to the pool at Denison?
Kellen, I think you're going to pick this up, right?
Yeah, really when everything stopped in March for us, sadly, we lost the opportunity in nationals, and then everybody went remote and went home at first. And that first part for us was, how do we get the team some sort of normalcy? Just because this is such a training intensive sport and our team identifies as this so much as a swimmer, how can we maintain for some part? And we really worked with our strength and performance coach and getting them some optional workouts, whether that's on dry land and conditioning. But as everybody knows, for that first part, nobody really had water time. But so our kids were scratching at opportunities left and right throughout the containment period. Some swimming in open water with people we know up in New York and everything, but getting those opportunities to try to find. Heck, we had people that flew across the country during the quarantine, or sorry, containment period, just to be able to train for a month or two. So they were just missing that, and giving them those opportunities and trying to help them grow during that period, and giving it a purpose. Because really, as we know, championships aren't won and lost in the end of the year. It's during that down period, and they really were forced to find ways to grow during that down period. But now we're back on campus, and Greg, you want to kind of take where we've been through then?
Yeah, school started a couple weeks early for us this year. Originally, we were supposed to start at the end of August, and the university moved the calendar up. And we realized that we were going to have some athletes arriving on campus who had not had the opportunity to do very much. Despite our efforts to keep them engaged with dry land over the summers, some just didn't have access to the equipment or didn't have access to space. And some of them, quite honestly, were still recovering emotionally from the news in March, but also struggling with the challenges that containment and having been thrown out of the routine. And they were struggling with that mightily over the summer. And so a lot of my summer was spent just talking with the athletes. So we knew coming in that they were going to be in a pretty rough spot mentally and physically. And so, we got started with, preseason voluntary workouts right out of the gate. really just trying to get them reintroduced to the water, spending a little bit of time every day, an hour a day, just getting in the water, working on drills, just trying to get the metabolism kicked in. At the same time, they were able to incorporate, get involved with our strength and power development coach with Coach Bo, and start again getting things, getting that motor running a little bit. And so we had 3 weeks of preseason. I think it was 3 weeks, maybe 4, of preseason, where the kids just had an opportunity to move forward. And then since then, we started practices, organized workouts. We're in our 2nd week now, and it's a truncated schedule right now. Normally we'd be training 6 days a week, but because of the 114-day 19-week rule that we have to work with within Division III, we've decided to alternate weeks where we're training 4 days a week with days that we're seeing the kids 5 days a week, and that totals, even on the weeks where we're only going 4 days a week, that gives us 8 touches with the kids. We have both morning and afternoon practices those days. And we're just now, after so many weeks of preseason and now into our 2nd week of organized workouts, we're just finally now getting to a place physiologically, and I think mentally ready to start embracing and handling some heavier work. Like last night was our heaviest workout of the season. I know it caught a couple of the kids off guard. I mean, because it had been not necessarily soft, but we've been kind of really easing into it. But last night was the first time where we had dropped some intervals on them that were a little bit kind of like eye-opening for them. I was like, okay, now it's time to go. And they're still making adjustments. Some of them handled it beautifully, and others are still trying to find that gear. And we're taking care of much more than a body out there. We got to get their heads and their hearts in the right place too. So I think we're off to a good start, but we got a long ways to go, because I think that containment thing really impacted our athletes quite a bit. And Mike, you saw that with your own athletes, I know.
Yeah, and we were, we were very fortunate to have some great leadership from Denison athletes who trained with us over the summer. And those guys put together a weight room in a garage. And they were getting after it in their weight room. They were riding 12 miles on their bikes to the lake, and then they were swimming 3 or 4 miles with us. So it was great to have some leadership from your crew this summer.
Well, and I can appreciate that, and I was really proud of them. And I know you had a little bit of a mecca going there. Everybody was all hearts and heads were turning to Victor, which was great, and we appreciated that opportunity. But it's not unusual to see that kind of initiative being taken by our team, and I was really proud to see the things that you were reporting, but the things that they're sharing with me too. So thank you very much for taking them in.
Oh, it was our pleasure. Guys, I'm very fortunate to have experience both as a Division III and Division I swimmer, and both as a Division III and Division I coach. And that perspective for me as a club coach has been critical in the way that I communicate with my parents regarding their college search, their selection process. Can you guys both speak a little bit about what makes a Division III experience so special and really so unique at Denison and in general?
Well, I think, like Division I, I think, as you're aware, in Division I, there's all sorts of strata within Division I. You've got those that are real, you've got Tier 1, those are the top 30, top 40 programs in the country. Then you got a mid-level, and then you got probably a lower tier in Division I. And we see the same stratification here in Division III. And you've got those teams that are ramped up a little bit more than others that are more competitively based, and then you've got others that are frankly, more participation centered, and all of them have value. All of them serve a really important purpose in the student athletes, college years. I think for us here at Denison, I think one of the things that's distinguished us over the years is that Denison does not look at swimming as extracurricular. In fact, it looks at it as co-curricular. And that this is it's an essential part of our student athletes' development as young people, to be able to participate in a highly competitive athletic experience. And so, while we may lack, let's say, world-class talent in the Division III, I do generally see that, at least here at Denison, our athletes can bring world-class effort. And Bill Belichick, I remember, and it's one of my favorite sayings, is that, talent establishes the floor while character establishes the ceiling. And it's, you know, our kids may not necessarily have the talent walking through the door, but they can exhibit the same work ethic and commitment and character that any athlete in the world can exhibit. And those are the expectations that we have with our swimmers and divers here, is that they're going to bring their very best every single day. And I think that that's what makes us co-curricular, is that, you know, having been here as long as I have, as I tell the team, and I tell this actually to recruits quite a bit, there's two windows of time that I'm really concerned with our student athletes. The first is the 4-year experience that they're having here at Denison. We want them to have an amazing 4-year experience. We want them to be able to walk across the stage at graduation knowing wholeheartedly that they gave everything they could to their experience, that they got everything out of their ability and everything out of Denison that it had to offer. And we want them to have an amazing sense of satisfaction as they leave here. That's a really good short-term goal. But there's a much bigger goal here, and that's the 40-year window. And that's the one I'm really concerned about, is how does Denison swimming and diving, how does the Denison University experience inform and provide a foundation for them over the next 40 years of their lives? Because if all we're talking about is a 4-year experience in the course of somebody's life, that's pretty short term. And if we've turned them into, let's say, if we've turned them into a world beater at the pool at the expense of having a great life in front of them, then I'm not sure that necessarily our priorities are in the right place. But what gives me the greatest sense of satisfaction and affirmation of what we're doing is, now I'm in my 34th year here as coach at Denison. I haven't hit the 40-year mark, but my first classes, the first classes that I ever coached here at Denison, those guys and those women are now in their mid-50s. And I've watched them build wonderful lives for themselves and their families and their communities around them. I've seen how, and to hear the stories of how Denison swimming provided them a foundation to have those kind of lives and a way to give back is the most affirming thing I think any coach can ever hear. And so that 40-year window is the most important thing. But I think it starts with the message they get when they walk through the door, that what we're doing here is not only important to them as far as their individual development, but it's important to the university and our community. And so from that standpoint, it's co-curricular. And I just think that message resonates for them over the time they're here and well beyond while they're here.
Kellen, have you found that one of the reasons why the performances at Denison have been so incredible over the time that you've been there, which I think is 9 years, have you found that initially as a coach, you may have thought focusing on the X's and O's was the key, but as you just heard Greg mention, focusing on long-term personal development is probably the seminal reason behind the success. Can you talk about what that's like? I might have lost these guys. Did I lose you guys? I lost these guys. We'll get them back.